All right. So in this episode, I have a guest here that is someone who's normally would be a competitor in the industry to my company. But the reason why I have this guest on here today is because I think it's good for you guys to hear different points of view of the very same thing that we talk about here at the AI Automation Alchemist podcast. So let's get this episode started.
The most real and relevant resource on AI and automation. AI Automation Alchemist podcast, sponsored by Grata Software.
So today I have Rob Wright. Rob Wright is a member of Waffle. Waffle is a company that leverages artificial intelligence and infuses artificial intelligence into small businesses. And just want to say hi, Rob. How you doing?
Hey, great, Ray. Thanks for having me on the podcast today. Excited to talk about AI and some ways we can help the listeners and some things that we found challenges along the way.
Awesome. Now, when we were talking before, I was making a joke about or not making a joke, but I was talking about Waffle itself, and I went to Waffle. I keep going to waffle.com, and unfortunately, that waffle.com is taken because they're spelled Waffle WAFFL, right? And so it's taken. And what did you tell me? Who owns it? Who owns the?
Yeah, so we
domain?
did some exploring on there. It's owned by Waffle House, and so we've actually talked to their legal team. I don't know if we'll end up ever getting it, but they definitely own the domain because a lot of people leave off the E and mistype it, so they want to redirect that traffic. So yeah, Waffle House owns it.
That's funny. So anyways, so if you want to go to the site, it's Go Waffle. So go WAFFL.com. And that's the website for his company, for Rob's company. And so again, so today's conversation, we're going to have a casual conversation about AI. You and I are both in the same space, roughly. I think we established that maybe some companies are different, some of our customers, but at the end of the day, we're kind of doing very similar things. We're deep into artificial intelligence. We're not necessarily on the marketing side of artificial intelligence. We're more on the building tools for operations and things like that. And so, give me a little bit of background, or give the audience a bit of background of who you guys are and how'd you guys get started.
Yeah, happy to do that. So the funny thing was when we did our kind of pre-call to see if it would be a good fit, from listening to the podcast, I did think it would be a good fit, but we were like, oh, we do that. We do that. And we're like, can we do this? I don't know. We're doing like a lot of the same thing, but some of the customer bases are different in terms of enterprise versus small business. So I think we found enough differences there, and we really connected well on what we're doing. So basically, I've been doing development mostly as a product owner, scrum master for the last decade. And AI obviously has increased the ability for guys like me to be involved even more on the development team. And these tools have made it a lot better. And having that kind of fundamental understanding has helped me. We ended up starting Waffle. Originally, we built an ed tech platform, and kind of that's what we were calling our company. But as we went through that, not only is ed tech hard to sell, like you said, we're not on the sales side of things because of the red tape. We've had a lot of people who are like, can you build us this? Can you build us this? Can you build us this? And we knew we could build product. And actually, we just kind of started following the money. And so that's kind of how Waffle was born. And we ended up doing our first custom development project, and I kind of talked to a guy in person at a conference I was at, and I said, look, gave him a demo of the product we had already built in EdTech. And fortunately, some of the parsing and processing of PDF documents was similar to something they wanted to do in their manufacturing business. So we're able to kind of give proof of concept. But, it was funny. We made a lot of promises, or I made a lot of promises on behalf of our dev team to say, hey, we've got a portal that you can log into. We've got this concepts engine that you'll be able to talk to, and it'll generate product requirements, PRD documents. And so then we went back after we got a contract and a deposit, and we built that in 3 days, and then we're like, here it is. And so that's kind of how we got started. And then it's been no shortage of customers it just seems that, Ray, we're in the right space with the right knowledge and point in time to solve a pain point for all the way from solopreneurs up to enterprise clients. Everyone's trying to figure out how to integrate AI, and unfortunately, using AI does not mean that you've gained a competitive advantage or that it's integrated. Like, those are very different things, and I hope we'll kind of get into talking about that a little bit today.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue because I just had this conversation with someone the other day where I said, actually it was yesterday, it was last night. I had a conversation at a networking event where I was trying to explain that AI doesn't necessarily mean automation, and automation doesn't necessarily mean AI. And then what you're saying is that using AI doesn't necessarily mean a competitive advantage. Really, it's how you implement it. Because I mean, you're seeing it probably as much as I am in the industry. Is there are people that are marketers? They've been marketers their whole career. Probably have a 20-year company on being a marketer, and then all of a sudden now they're AI consultants. What are your thoughts on that? That kind of, because you're battling the same competition in the same vein that I am. You know what I mean?
Right. So I think there's obviously there's a huge advantage, and kind of AI has led us as an entrepreneur that's dealt in software. It's now I'm a software development firm or an AI consulting firm. So we wouldn't exist without it. The problem is a lot of people are going to find this is, and this exists across all traditional agency based companies. You're going to find that people have oversold themselves, and at the end of the day, you may be hiring a marketing firm. Are they really marketing, and do they understand the principles of marketing and the 5 Ps, I think it is from my MBA class, and some things like
Yep, I
that?
remember those 5 Ps.
Or or are they just using Go High Level and a Zapier plugin? Like, do they really understand at a core? And that is so big for us and what we do. Technically, do you understand it, or are you a college kid who knows how to use Lovable but doesn't understand the risk and the security protocols? And at the end of the day, have you done a hello world? Do you understand architecture of database design? Have you written in actual code and languages? Because the role, and we may talk about this later, the role of software developer is rapidly changing, but it's kind of like if you have been working out for a really long time and you go to the gym and you're curling 50s, and somebody comes in with an exoskeleton and they're like, I'm doing the same thing you are. Yes, in this instance you are, but if we take that off, some of the form's not there, the actual muscle's not there. There's a lot of issues with that. And I think people are going to find that, and that's a risk across. And that's what we're going to be battling, and maybe some of the listeners are going to be battling, is how do you distinguish yourself? How do you show that expertise, that you have that foundation? And obviously a lot of it comes from reviews and things like that. But it's going to be a challenge. And then to circle back to kind of what you said, AI and automations are not the same thing. People use that synonymously. 2023 is when like Chat GPT came out. That's AI. That's a large language model. That's talking to something and getting an output. Then you kind of had workflows really starting in 2024 where we're like, okay, we can hook a large language model up to an action through like Zapier and stuff like that, or N8N. Then in 2025, 2026, we're starting to get agents. They see, well, let's not make an LLM. Let's make kind of an agent that can actually do the automation portion of it and be intelligent at the same time. And that's kind of where we're at now. But agents, automations, AI, these are all different things that mean something different in your business. And learning to just speak the language is kind of the first step to try to lead towards that competitive advantage.
It's funny you say that. Last night I was being introduced to a bunch of people, and I was introduced to this one couple who just got into the AI game about a year ago. As she was talking, she was like, we're building these agents for these companies, very similar. Another competitor, right? If you really look at it from a grand scheme, another person who's competing against us in the same space. And she's like, oh, we're building agents for small businesses. Oh, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing that. And as she was talking, I kind of noticed a pattern in her speech. And because there's a lot of influencers out there that are teaching AI, and they have very specific patterns in what they're saying when they're talking about artificial intelligence. And I noticed that she had a very similar pattern of someone that I actually signed up for one of I'm not going to say her name, but she's an influencer that was a marketing company that 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever ChatGPT came out, she decided to flip her company to being an AI consultant. And so she's been teaching a bunch of people how to become AI consultants. And this happens to be someone that went through her program. And I was talking to her yesterday, and she was saying all the keywords, all the sales keywords when it comes to like what you want to do when you're selling AI. And we got into this really deep part of it. And I, obviously me going tech, I went straight tech, and I'm like, and so I said, oh, so how are you building your agents? And she's like, oh, well, we're not using ChatGPT. We're not using Cloud Code. I said, so are you using Node.js, or are you using, I went down to like, what language are they using? Oh, yeah, we're building it in Node.js. And so I'm like, okay, do you know programming? She's like, no. She's like, we use Cloud Code to help build the Node.js, to help build the agent in order to do the job. I just looked at her like, and she's making good money, by the way. She's doing very, very well. And so she reminds me, I talked to her, and then there's a term that I want to bring up. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you ever heard that term?
Yeah, but you have to remind me a little bit more about it.
Okay. No, it's fine. Like, most people didn't even know this. I just found this out. So the Dunning-Kruger effect. So this is okay. I had to look this up yesterday because I was like, oh my gosh, I heard this term that was being said by someone else who's kind of in our game, who's been doing programming, coding, and everything, and they're trying to explain the current, like that, someone like her, the lady that I spoke to, like what she's going through right now. It's called, so the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's by two psychologists, David Dunning and Justin Kruger, and they did a study showing that how bad people are at judging their own skills, especially how they're clueless. And most importantly, what it means is basically someone who doesn't know has far more confidence in, because they don't know what they don't know. They use their massive confidence in order to essentially move markets, move people into believing like they know a lot, right? And then you have people who know a lot who are not as confident because they actually know where the caveats are. They know the limitations. And it was an amazing conversation with her. I talked to her, and then I was listening to some podcasts, and they talked about this Dunning-Kruger effect, and I was like, oh my God, that's what's going on. Like, there's people that don't know what they don't know, and they're glazing all the stuff that AI can do. And then you got people like us who are in the know. We know the limitations. We've experienced it. And so for us, we're kind of afraid to go crazy on AI can do everything. You know what I mean? Because we know the limitations. What do you think about that?
It's funny you bring that up, and I've heard that now that you reminded me of it. Two thoughts here. So one, from my own experience, it's funny how you describe that, is that we have our real CTO, our real technical guy, the guy that can match you step for step. I'm just kind of in the middle, right? But the thing is, I know that. And so the funny thing is, like when I was at West Point, like we do an engineering track. It's not a minor, but it's kind of close to that. It's several fundamental courses. I did mine in computer science. So I'm literally writing like Python scripts to retrieve stuff from the database. And like I was doing coding before coding became easy, right? You don't even have to do the bulk coding anymore. AI can do it for you. But like when you get that base and understand that, it's a much different mindset that it puts you in. And unfortunately, it is kind of odd for people that maybe are going to get into programming now. You kind of still got to do some of these unnecessary building foundational courses so you understand and can check the AI code. So it's funny that you said that, because I'm always like, that's beyond my capability. And then the CTO's like, you could actually do that because now you have AI and you understand the fundamentals. I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to do that. And so the second thing is, when you're a business and you're evaluating, not that that lady that you talk to is not helpful, but you have to understand what her role is, right? So is she an insurance underwriter or is she an insurance salesperson? Because like understanding there's different levels. Like she's AI fluent. If you want to talk to her about all the different tools that you could plug in to make your business more efficient, she's the person. But if you want to talk about building custom agents, she's not the right person, and she's misrepresenting herself, and not to her own fault, but that's not the firm that you want to talk to. And so from a business standpoint, you've got to start doing your own investigation into credentialing of, let me see what you guys have built. Let me see who works for the team. What's their background? What's their education level? How long have they been doing this? Because you're right, these influencers, it is the new, let me create an Amazon fulfillment store. It's the new,
Oh
like,
my gosh, yes.
it's those things.
It's
Now
those.
it's, I'm going to create an AI agency. And it's so funny because our CEO gets tons of calls booked, discovery calls, and then they always try to change it. Like, well, I want you guys to help me build an agency. And they're like, we're not influencers. We're not selling you how to build an agency. Do you want to build an
Yeah.
agency? You need to go to school. You need to learn all these things. And he's like, I've been having to just hang up the call. I'm like, if you want to talk to me about this, it's $250 an hour, period. I'm not here to mess around and talk. Like, this is not what we're doing. So it's so funny because we've been getting that same thing, but it's the new gold rush. And I'm not saying those people can't provide something valuable to you, but they know nothing. And you probably can set a lot of that up yourself just by not being scared and going out and playing with tools. And you then realizing what you said, don't become overconfident. You don't know how to code. You built something on Lovable. You built something on Codex. Like, It doesn't work. It's not secure. I don't care if they offer penetration testing now through this, that, and the other for $100 on whatever. AI does things in a very certain way. Most people don't even know to take the copy and paste text from ChatGPT and take out the long dash because I know you wrote it with that. I also
Exactly.
know that you wrote on Facebook your post that you're arguing about. If you have something halfway through that says, and here's the crazy part, or here's what most people overlook, you wrote that with AI. Like I know that those contractions are AI. So those of us that know AI are able to pick up on a lot of that. And what do you think hackers and people that can exploit workflows and things like that? What AI does things in patterns. That's how it learns. That's what it's built off of, is pattern recognition.
Yeah, the it's not this, it's that.
Yeah.
Or
Every time.
like that phrase is overly used. In fact, the other day I was writing an email copy, and obviously I use Claude a lot for my copy because I like the that model better, and it was full of M dashes, full of the it's not this, it's that, the quick 3 sentence, the quick fragmented like 3 statements that
Mhm.
go side by side, but it's like it's obvious, an obvious pattern of AI. And so I had to go back in and say, okay, remove this, like change these. I have a 5 bullet point section in all of my training data, like all of my you know how you create your files that have like your rules and your readmes and also like that. I have like 5 bullet point thing that says do not have M dashes and replace it with real punctuations. Like, and then specifically in my own brand voice, because my brand voice is dot dot dot. I use dot 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 a lot
Me too.
because that's just my thing. I tend to, in mid sentence, I'm always thinking, and so I illustrate that in my writing with a dot dot dot. And so always have to tell AI to do that. On that note, I went to a mastermind in Boise, Idaho, just recently, and the whole thing was about AI. And again, this is a marketing company who's now showing people how to use AI. But what was great is that they were showing this how to build your own brand voice, which I guess from, I don't know if you've done this before. Have you worked on brand voice and building those kind of things built into the agents or the systems that you're building for people?
Yes, we haven't had a client that needs that, but one of our offerings is our Waffle OS, and we have distinct agents that do act differently and have different sets of expertise, if you will. And we've made some. Bottom line, yes, we have.
Okay. Well, and the reason why I said that is because so the whole idea of this mastermind is there's a bunch of people in the industry all doing things very similar, and we were kind of like masterminding and helping each other out and trying to get better at what we're doing. And so this thing about the brand voice, I'll give credit to Darcy Juarez of Magnetic Marketing. She was probably the person, or she is the person that kind of ran that session, and she showed us how to create a folder that has all of our, like, my podcast episodes that have me talking, all of my blog posts that have me writing, like all that kind of stuff, and packaging that all into a folder, into one document that has what essentially would be called your brand voice. And then you prompt it to create a brand voice document, and there's a specific prompt that she created. It was really good. And I now use it for everything, and it's really cool because whatever it does for me, it always uses my type of writing and my type of speaking, which is really, really awesome. However, on that note, the problem with doing that is now you're using up a lot of tokens
Yes,
because now your context window is much bigger.
that's what I was
Um,
gonna say. But if you don't do
yeah,
it, it also loses context, and it'll just go
yeah.
back to writing the way that AI knows to write.
So, for the sake of the audience, can you explain context window?
Basically, context window, when you're looking, especially like if you're using a tool like Cursor, which is one of the tools we use in development, um, it's going to tell you from 0 to 100% how much of, basically, if you want to think of it like RAM in your computer, how much of the processing power is it used and how much does it have available to continue to focus on the specific instructions that you've given it. And that's where it comes into kind of like swarm agents and kind of breaking things down at a smaller level because AI is really good at doing certain things. The context window gets too big, that's where we call and start to see hallucinations. It's just doing things to get them done because it's running out of the ability to look back at the original instructions and complete the task the way that you wanted. It's just going to do it. So, you want to, like in Cursor specifically, you're looking at 70%. Once you get there, you're probably going to fire off a sub agent to do remaining tasks because it's going to lose the focus, and the end product starts to look really bad. And so that's why one thing to focus on if you're going to look into AI is not only just tool fluency, but like prompt engineering is as big of a thing as any. And that's for whatever you're doing and any tool, learning how to write. A lot of people want to use AI to make things faster. It should really, depending on what you're doing, make you better at it. You should have a better email response, but you actually have to go through and edit it. You want to create a presentation document, use it for brainstorming, use it, but it takes time to write good prompts. Ultimately, you can get a better product, but a lot of people are just using it for speed. And there are some things to use it for speed, like cold outbound, things like that. But, you
Yeah.
know, a lot of times it's not the answer just to make you faster. It's actually to make you better. So.
Yeah, so you mentioned the word swarm several times, and I really want to touch on this because I think our audience is probably won't understand exactly what a swarm is yet. They will eventually when they check out some of our materials that we post out there. But explain to the audience what you mean by a swarm.
Yeah, so if you a lot kind of right now it's in the manual processes, but there are tools that are getting made to take a large task that you want and kind of an orchestration agent, if you will break the task down and fire off sub agents to go do certain portions of this major building block, and their context windows will be better. So they will, but it's the one that actually, the orchestration agent is the one that, kind of determines all this so the human doesn't necessarily have to. And that makes it really powerful for kind of autonomous coding, at least in chunks to get things done. So essentially one guy takes and breaks down a major task and gets a bunch of other agents to build it and then compiles it all back together and then reviews it and fires off other agents as needed until the original intent and prompt is done. That's kind of a rudimentary way of saying what it
Yeah.
does.
When I use Claude Code, I before I build any project, the first thing I do is I create a whole bunch of agents based on their specific skill set. So like I'll have an agent that's specific for design, an agent that's specific for coding, an agent that's specific for quality assurance checking, and give them all specific skills. And then there is an orchestration agent, which I hate using that term because my last guest hates that term. I don't know if you. So the last guest I had on my podcast, she was on TikTok, and she called it. She goes, orchestration. It's the company's way of saying I don't know what's going on. And I started laughing because we've been using that term orchestration agents lately. So it's really funny. But the orchestration agent's job is to get the input from you, like the person chatting, then basically telling it what you want. And then it knows to take that information and now go call the appropriate agents to get the job done. And so the swarming, that's a good example of swarming. It's just basically that's happening all simultaneously, like all at the same time. Very similar like bees, how they swarm,
Right.
type situation. Yeah, there was something else I had in because of swarming also. Okay, so this is the thing with swarming, you use up a lot of tokens on swarming as well, especially if you don't have guardrails or something. So let me jump over to OpenClaw so that we can have this conversation because it's part of an OpenClaw kind of conversation. Are you familiar with OpenClaw?
Yes. We
I mean,
built
have.
the
Yeah.
smart version of OpenClaw that has
Okay.
guardrails and it's built for regular people, not nerds.
Yeah. So OpenClaw, just to give everyone just a rundown of OpenClaw, if you haven't heard from it about it already, it's an open source project that was released not too long ago, and it hit. The reality is the project actually took a year to build. I don't know if anyone knew that. It actually took a year to build it because it was an open source project, and if anyone knows what open source projects are like, one person has an idea, they post it up on their GitHub repository, and they basically let everyone know that it exists, and then people just jump in there and just add features to it, and it follows a specific protocol. So it's not like people are just throwing code at it. People have to approve the code. The people that are managing that repository have to approve the code that goes into it. And so there's one guy who was the original designer of OpenClaw, and then he was managing that code base. And for a year, it built out this amazing platform that allowed people to swarm agents, do all this kind of work for them using artificial intelligence or large language models, and it took off really fast. Well, towards the latter part, it took off. Like from the moment people found out about it, it went crazy, And ultimately, the guy got hired by OpenAI, and he's and now OpenClaw is managed by OpenAI's foundation. So that's the latest of that. And so, anyways, that was the background of OpenClaw. And you said you built a smarter OpenClaw.
Yeah, so basically, like, another bullet point to add on the OpenClaw was like, this guy took Claude Code and was like, okay, if it can code for me, I'm gonna like repackage this code agent into doing other things, not just coding. And so he was kind of the first guy. I mean, not that Anthropic didn't know this, but they hadn't released it because they've got, protocols to go through approvals and all these other things. But he like figured it out before everybody else, repackaged it, and was like, hey, now you can build agents that do whatever you want them to do. And people went nuts for it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what at Waffle, at our like entry level for embedding AI into your business, or Waffle OS platform, it's 6 very detailed agents, finance, sales, marketing, that are really dialed in to your business and what you want to do, but they don't exist on some Mac Mini that you have to buy and download all this, like all the technical stuff that, a lot of people that listen to the podcast or want, that they're all intimidated by. This is built for them. It's the simpler version of OpenClaw that's controlled and guardrailed and really just does the things that you want it to do safely with API integrations and different things like that.
So how do you? That's a good segue into that, because so your platform, how does it handle? Because you're saying that it has an agent for each section of the business. So and just to preface this, I do a whole presentation about the business. The normal business has multiple operations within it. They have your customer acquisition, you have your sales. So basically your marketing, your sales, then there's inventory, then there could be operations, production, manufacturing, to distribution, to logistics, and then finally to customer service. So there's like 7 parts of a business. And you just mentioned a few of them. You mentioned finance and stuff like that. The agents that you have built within your platform, is that one agent that's handling that whole business function? Or do you have sub agents within that are handling some of the more minute details?
So currently, it's one agent on the user side that appears, but that
Okay.
agent has skill. This goes into the tech side. They have skills.
Yeah.
They can fire off sub agents to do tasks for them.
Okay.
It will
Okay.
only appear to the user as there's one agent. And that's kind of the simplification of it. And the cool
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
is, like, for example, Perplexity has come out with Perplexity Computer recently, which has some cool aspects and features. And so we're toying around with the idea, we may add Perplexity Computer as a skill that the agent can use in an orchestration manner. We know we love that word, to do if it thinks that the task that the user has asked would be best served by using Perplexity Computer. For example, Perplexity Computer's
Yeah.
cold outbound email sequence is really, really good. And so that's kind of how we're kind of like protecting and kind of building for the future, is that we're keeping it simple on the user side, but our agents have their foundation. They can employ sub agents to do tasks, and then they will be able to access certain skills to do things. And all that really won't be seen by the user, because the user interface is through Waffle OS, and it just appears like, wow, that did that, and it created this, it completed this. And then we always follow on by going, hey, this was a cool idea. Do you want to automate this and do this every week, every month, every quarter? Like
Yeah.
write a blog post, or, send out an email sequence, or scrape your CRM to see what at-risk clients you have, and create an action plan for each of them. But these are like things that, like we talked about, Ray, we're looking at the small business going, you don't really have time to do that. So what are the things we
Yeah.
can do to enhance your business you don't have time to do with these kind of general agents that we've built? And you're kind of focused a lot on like building a custom agent in a more enterprise business to do that thing, so they don't have to hire somebody, or they can grow without some limitations. So side
Yeah,
note there. Yeah.
absolutely. And I actually like so Perplexity. I'm glad you mentioned Perplexity, because I actually tried Perplexity Computer. Didn't work out for me. I it maxed out my token usage for one request. I made one request and it maxed out my token usage. I was pretty upset. In fact, I have an episode. I think it was, I want to say it's like episode 9 or 10, or maybe it's 11, but where I talk about that inside the AI Automation Alchemist podcast is very podcast. I think one of my episodes I talk about perplexity, and I actually go over perplexity and how to use it. But then the funny part is I mentioned that I used Perplexity Computer the day they let me use it, and immediately maxed out my token usage on day one on the very first task, which was, by the way, it was aggregating Reddit posts, social media posts, and everything about specific pain points that customers would have, and then converting those into email sequences. And that's what. So when it got to the email sequences, it basically was like, you're out of tokens.
Yeah.
so you got to wait now. And I'm like, it was the first time I used it where like I've been using Claude Code religiously. I've been using Cursor. I know we talked about that. We use Cursor as well. And all those, I never max out those. And I get a whole bunch of requests. So it's really interesting. But that's, that would be I would recommend using the API rather than actual computer side, just because of the, we use Perplexity API for a lot of stuff, and it's, you could get a lot more for less price, if you use the API.
Right. And I think that's what maybe a lot of listeners can think about that is something to just be on your radar is token usage. It's a buzzword, if you will. That's how the subscription model came about through SaaS in the last 10 to 20 years. And it's always like, how can we get recurring revenue from customers? And now it's going to be maybe base recurring revenue, but also token usage and things that a lot of private equity and VC money is propping up a ton of these language models because
Yeah.
they want users to use it, gather data, get smarter, get better, get addicted to it, if you will, embedded in their system. And there is the law that things get cheaper over time. So we probably will see computing power continue to get cheaper depending on how AI infrastructure develops. But a lot of these, like VC, you're getting about 50% more tokens for half the price because it's all being funded. Because what the most valuable currency in the world is user data. And it
Yep.
shifted from like Facebook just wants to know everything about you so they can serve you ads. And we're seeing like ChatGPT kind of do some of that. But like I can now inform a much smarter large language model that can be used to, golly, do all kinds of things in terms of like inform major global organizations and governments. And so it's now just not like what's your personal details so we can serve you ads. It's like how many people can we get to use this software or this large language model so it can learn and then we can sell its insights for whatever. So people don't realize that. And that's one of the things that we pay direct costs. We have no discount when we're paying at the, like, when you're paying directly to those because it's not a user interface. You're going right through direct line and you're buying it from the company. And so we
Yep.
also try to have a very clear, like, this is how many credits you have. Each request shows you how many you used. And obviously a big thing for us is always trying to optimize that. And some of that's like the agent appears as an agent, but some of that's trying to switch between until you ask it to do something, it's trying to talk to you in as a large language model, and then it switches to agent mode, which if you guys know what that is, I mean, agents, they use 10 times the amount of tokens, 20, 30 times the amount of
Yeah.
tokens, but they produce such higher quality results in terms of their outputs. For if you go to an agent, like you go into Claude Code and you say, hey, and you're not using Sonnet and you're using an agent mode, you can say, hey, make a marketing plan for this website and this, like the output is going to be so much more significant than if you're using,
Yeah.
Sonnet or something. So anyways, I don't really know where I was
Well, and
going
the
with
thing is
that, but
because the agent, I agree, because the agents, what they're doing is they're going through, and the agents aren't just doing the task, they're validating their own tasks, they're double checking that they're getting the right output. And especially if you prompt it correctly and you tell it exactly what output you want, it'll continue working until it gets to that output. So even though it may error out or it may not be getting the right output, it'll continue working until it gets the right output, which is what all those tokens are being used for. It's just constantly reiterating through that process. And you said something about and what you said about how you guys price things. So that's one of the questions I had for you, because I think it's an important thing to understand is, like you said, you guys are going direct. You guys are paying directly for token usage. So you're kind of having to guesstimate what your users are going to be using the platform or how much they're going to be using the platform. How do you battle that? How do you battle that situation? Because I'm looking on your website and I look at your pricing and I'm sitting there going, oh, 1,000 tokens, 500 tokens, 250. Sorry, not tokens, credits.
right,
I don't
right,
want to so credits. But you're in the same boat as Anthropic and OpenAI, where like a credit doesn't necessarily mean a token, or it could, but sometimes you may have to give more because some people are using less. It's like, is that kind of your business model? You guys are kind of fluctuating your tokens
So
usage?
interestingly enough, probably by the time we're kind of repositioning a little bit of our marketing. Whereas at first it was like, let's put out Waffle OS. People are just going to jump on it. People are going to use it. It's so powerful. It really is. But then you're battling like a mass marketing, like you're just trying to get individual users that are highly motivated to do things. And
Yeah.
so what we think the better play is from a marketing side is for us to it's gonna have a fixed price base. You're not even gonna be able to use it unless you pay the fixed price base to access it. That's but part of that comes with consulting, and so we meet with you multiple times and help design a lot of the automations in there because what we've found is, like, people's tendency to invest time in trying to understand something is super low. The problem because everybody wants the Chat GPT thing, but you have to
Yep.
understand the
Absolutely.
limitations of it. It's not really going to do that much for you except write your emails or analyze a PDF. And like I take a picture of my dishwasher and I'm like, hey, this is what's happening. Can you give me some suggestions as to what maybe I should troubleshoot? It's the new Google, if you will. And so that's part of the problem. So we're shifting more to that. Like this is going to be AI embedded architecture. And so there is a token usage that comes with that. And what we have designed on our side, we are not funding anyone's, like, we're not losing money, period. So we
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
so when you make a request, it processes and generates how many, tokens that is actually charged from the model that gets used. We know how many cents that costs, and then we have a direct correlation of what markup we're going to achieve. And this is probably getting a little too detailed, but then when that markup, it does the math and it goes, that took 0.28 tokens from you because that's what it
Yeah.
used. And so it is a direct correlation with
Yeah.
all of that. So
Well, and that's the same model like Cursor uses and all these other platforms that are essentially wrappers around the main model, right?
correct.
Um, but it's just funny because it's the fact is we're all playing this game of just like we're shooting craps at this point. Like we don't know what the end result is. You're saying you're going to be pricing based on the usage, and like you said, the amount it costs you plus cost plus, which is an actual industry term for business. It's cost plus what you're doing, what your cost is to the request, and then what your plus is, what your profit is, which is totally a fair game. I think the only issue that you run into is um if you think about it, like Claude, for instance, like they're highly funded, so there is no cost plus. It's actually cost minus because you're paying $20 a month, but you're getting $1,000 worth of token usage. And you said it earlier. You covered a very specific thing earlier where you said that they're doing that because they're trying to get the hype. They're trying to get people to like it, love it, use it, bring people into the fold because at their end game is really enterprise customers. They really want the people that are paying the $1 million price tags, the $500,000 price tags in order to have it in their business because they're not shooting for the small business like you and I are. They want the big business. They want the big dollar signs. It's just interesting because we are in a wild west if you really think about it. We're in absolute wild west at this point. It reminds me of back when websites first came out and like who was it? The first website that came, I think it was like CNN or something. One of those. It probably wasn't CNN, but it was a publication that built the first website, and they built the website exactly like their magazine. And so everyone started building every website like a magazine. And then designers came in and said, "Oh, we could do it a lot better with CSS and make all these cool styles and all this kind of stuff." And then as the years progress, it's like now we can animate on the screen, and that's where Flash came in. And so I've watched this whole progress since 1995 when I first started building websites. And I feel like we're there again, where it's such a wild west. We're trying to figure it out. And some of us who've been in the game long enough from an engineering perspective, I'm not talking about the sales perspective, but from an engineering perspective, that, hey, we don't need developers. Oh, now we need developers again. Oh, we don't need developers. Oh, we need developers again. And I think in this case with AI, it's like We don't need developers, but we do need consultants. We do need people that understand what's going on behind the scenes. So I find it interesting how it is literally the Wild West. Nobody knows what we're paying for. I feel like at the end of the day, nobody knows. Like, I don't even know. Was it yesterday? Yesterday I was doing something in Claude Code, and I put the usage meter on the right-hand side because someone had told me that they adjusted their token usage to now you get a lot less token usage in the current plans. And you're hitting limits pretty quickly. I wanted to test that theory. So I had the usage on the right, and then I had my Claude Code on the left, and I gave it some tasks, and I was literally watching that thing every few seconds just like go higher and higher and higher. And I'm going, wow, I'm going to run out of my tokens for the session. It was the session usage. I'm going to run out of my tokens in no time. And
Right.
I haven't done anything.
And I think when we talk about like automations and your business, you've got to go with what you can afford, right? But like, software companies have existed for a long time. They come, they go, they shut down. Like I'm talking about the SaaS platforms, what you're
Oh,
paying
yeah,
for,
absolutely.
MailChimp, whatever. So if you're starting to change what your business does, and a lot of that is focused around, well, I've got a tool that does this. And you start to build like this Frankenstein, you've got to be very careful because when you do that, if that tool shuts down or that cost skyrockets or whatever happens, you're introducing all these other risk and breakpoints. And so that's where we get to, and kind of closer to the space you're in. Like ultimately, what we love to do for small businesses is go through a couple sprints of development with them and build a custom solution because that custom solution becomes a little bit language agnostic, meaning I've built you your own software as a service, your own ERP, your own CRM, whatever it is that performs certain business functions for you. But if Claude Code doubles in price overnight, we can make an adjustment to use another language. Now, it could take some time. It's going to cost a little money, but overall, your business is still going to run. So looking for solutions that can be agnostic and not completely dependent, that's something you've got to consider. And obviously it's what's in your budget range, but not just looking to make and solve a problem with one product, but looking to, and that's where competitive advantage is gained because it's not just about being more efficient. It's not just about doing things faster. It's about what can I use to generate value that I wasn't otherwise, and what can I remove as a cost by using AI. If you can't answer those two questions, then you shouldn't implement it in your business
Absolutely.
because you're
Yep.
just the same as everybody. Everybody's using AI, but just using tools is not going to make you win. Unfortunately, if you look in the stock market, the theory of the stock market is that everything that like most private information and all public information is instantly baked into the stock price. You're not going to do any better than anyone else. And that's kind of the same as AI. Like everyone has access to Claude. Everyone has access to Chat GPT. Like everyone's
Yeah.
using, cold outreach automations, or most people are. Maybe you're listening
Yeah.
to this podcast to try to figure out how to do that yourself. But
Yeah.
the advantage is you're not going to beat somebody unless you create something of unique value for your own business.
Absolutely, man. Is actually I'm trying to look up this again at that mastermind. Someone had done a presentation that showed current adoption rates of AI within like the business world, and it was mind blowing. It was like a 0.03% number, and they didn't do it like they didn't show it like just numbers. They showed a chart, like a big graph, and with all these little squares in it. Every square represented 1 million people, and it was like the graph was like this big, and only like this part here was green, which means people that are paying the $20 a month plans. And then it was like one line of maybe like 4 or 5 cells of people that were paying the $200 a month plan, and then the enterprise. And it was just it was crazy, the adoption rate. It was just crazy. The person that I was at that event with, they were like, opportunity. I see nothing but opportunity.
Yes. Yes. That.
you know but okay, but this made me think, this, you probably experienced this already. We're already having issues with Claude keep staying up. We're already having issues with OpenAI with tokenization. They're now throttling token usage for their current customers, a lot of their current customers, because they just don't have the capacity when it comes to resources to handle the current load, right?
Right. it's the same
Because
thing.
GPUs are not readily available, they're back ordered by a lot. They still gotta build the data centers. They still need the power to run these data centers, right? So, explain to me this, because you and I are in the same boat in the sense, like, we've kinda go all in with AI, right? Where do you see that going? Are we going to be do you think we're going to be investing heavily in this thing and then, like, we're just never gonna get to a certain point? Or is it gonna be one of these things where there's gonna be a bubble, and we're gonna have to go backwards? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think a lot of it ends up being determined by the price. And so, as much as they can increase, but the economy and the market has a way of evening itself out, right? So, if there's so much money to be made because token usage is rising, then companies are going to build more data centers because there's opportunity for them to make money. But the
Yeah.
interesting thing you pointed out is that this is like the problem with all the car EV credits, right? It'd
Mhm.
be great if everyone could drive an EV car because of carbon emissions, what have you. But our grid in the US can't support it, period. It can't. A municipality's grid can't support everyone charging their car at night. So it's kind of like we're in the same thing. But I think that as you look at adoption over time, what I like to call bolt-on AI. So every single software tool that's in use has a new AI feature, and kind of they're just throwing it out there. But eventually, as they make them better, they'll probably add them to premium subscription tiers. I know they're already doing that, but these tools are not AI native tools. These are bolt-on features that may make that tool more useful. And so I think that's where people's familiarity with AI is gonna come from. But you're probably right in that those couple lines that use AI probably will stay pretty low, and it will be they use AI through another tool that makes it easier for them to do a very specific action, not this is an LLM that you can interact with. So, like, for example,
Yeah.
let's look at Facebook, Meta. They've got their
Yep.
own LLM. Ask Meta.
Yeah,
Like, people will use it for that, but they won't go subscribe to a Meta subscription, right? So, um,
exactly.
yeah, so I think it's gonna grow. I don't there's obviously
Yeah.
there's all anytime new technology, big changes in the way the economy kind of is functioning and money's exchanging, there's gonna be some type of bubble. When it'll be, how it'll be, what's gonna pop, is Nvidia involved? I don't know any of that, but I think we're
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
very exciting time, especially for our business, but there's also a very exciting time for shifting the rules in what businesses are going to win. Whether it's small
Yeah.
businesses that can level up and grow, it's not just pounding on doors. And there's now a flavor of it is like who's the most tech savvy, and you can look back and go, okay, when Google Maps and kind of like if you're a local service business, right, if you can rank in the top 3 to 5 in the map pack, if I search pressure washing, you're going to get more bookings than everybody. It doesn't matter that Chris has been doing it for 25 years. They can't find Chris, he's way down in the map pack. So
Yeah.
you've got a 18-year-old that can get good at local SEO. He can become the biggest pressure washing business in your town. It creates opportunities. AI is doing the same thing in a different way. Who can leverage it and get competitive advantage can grow their business, can compete with enterprise clients, can appear larger than they are and do more work. And I don't know, it's an exciting time for everyone, I think, but some people are going to get left behind in the dust for sure.
Absolutely, man. And that, to be honest with you, that's a great that was a great way to put it. That was a great phrasing, great statement. We kind of hit the end of the podcast and I'm like, man, I still want to talk more, but that was like a perfect statement there. So before we go, I just want everyone to know again, where can they reach out? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can go to Go Waffle, and that's WAFFL.com. Check us out. We have basically 3 packages, if you will, to take solopreneurs, small businesses, and embed AI at the core of their business. And you can start with just Waffle OS, which is just agents that we will orchestrate into your workflows with you. We do that with you. They will interact with, say, your HubSpot, your Gmail. They'll do a lot of things to help you grow. The second phase is websites. We do AI powered websites, and those agents then become integrated with your Google Analytics. They write blog posts for you. They interact with customers through the chat agent on the front end. And then the third is where I really like to get people to after we build that trust is a custom solution. So whatever your workflow or business is, whether you need an ERP or some type of CRM, or we work with all types of industries to build a custom solution that is AI native and will set you up for the future for years to come. That's obviously that takes the longest and that's the most involved. But there's definitely 3 layers for us to help small businesses, and that's kind of what we're all about at Waffle.
Well, thanks for getting on the podcast. I appreciate you guys, doing this. I know, like I said, we kind of are dancing around the same market area, but obviously, you have Waffle, you have Grata Software. You can meet with both of us, and maybe we'll work together. You know what I mean? So it was a great conversation about AI. I feel like we can have more of these conversations and dig a lot deeper because there's just so much. There's just so much that people just don't know out there, and I think right now they're getting this like glazed version of what's happening in the AI space. And I think it's good to have people like yourself, myself, that are talking about what's really happening and how they can leverage the situation and the technology without giving them this fake idea that, okay, this is going to be this utopian thing that's going to, it's going to replace all your employees and it's going to do everything for you, and you don't have to touch it. It's going to work on its own. It's like, no, there's still work involved. There's still some stuff that you have to do, and you have to incorporate with the AI in order for it to, like you said, it was a tool. It's a great tool.
Great tool.
And that's and we'll leave it at that. But again, thanks. This is the AI Automation Alchemist podcast. Again, my guest Rob Wright from Waffle, and go check him out at gowaffle.com. That's gowaffl.com. And again, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and I'm sure Rob will see them when I post this, and he'll be able to answer that. And again, check out our next episode, which should be in the next week or so. And see you guys in the next video.